Prologue. The echo of history. They say that in history, there are some names that don't just live in books. They live in people's hearts. One of those names is Alexander the Great, known in our history as Sikandar the Great. He wasn't just a conqueror of lands. He changed the way the world thought. He was a king who turned every moment of his life into a challenge, and every challenge into victory. Birth. The destiny of a child. The year was 356 BCE. The place, Pella, a small town in Macedonia. There, to King Philip II and Queen Olympias, a child was born named Alexander. Queen Olympias believed her son was no ordinary human, but a blessing from the gods. She told him that his birth had a divine purpose. King Philip, on the other hand, saw in him the making of a future conqueror. When astrologers at the royal court predicted that this child would rule the world, people laughed. But within a few years, that boy would prove them right. Childhood incident: Bucephalus and the mark of courage. From an early age, Alexander was extraordinary. It is said that when he was only 10 years old, a wild horse was brought to the royal court. A horse so fierce that no one could tame it. Every soldier tried, but it refused to let anyone near. Then Alexander observed carefully. The horse was afraid of its own shadow. He turned the horse toward the sun so that its shadow fell behind, gently stroked its neck, and within moments the horse calmed down. King Philip, amazed, said, "My son, seek no small kingdom, for the world itself is too small for you." That horse was Bucephalus, who would become Alexander's most loyal companion in the years to come. Education. The meeting with Aristotle. To educate Alexander, the great philosopher Aristotle was chosen. Aristotle didn't just teach him knowledge, he taught him the meaning of life. He said, "A true king is not the one who conquers by the sword, but the one who rules through ideas." Aristotle taught Alexander science, philosophy, politics, and the art of war. He instilled in him the spirit of Greek culture, literature, and morality. In 3 years, he shaped a young boy into a strategic, thoughtful, and wise leader. The first test, the Battle of Chaeronea. At the age of 18, Alexander entered the battlefield for the first time, the Battle of Chaeronea. His father, King Philip, entrusted him with command of the left wing of the army. The battle began. Screams, clashing swords, the scent of blood everywhere. But Alexander, with remarkable courage and strategy, surrounded the enemy forces. Riding his horse, he fought fiercely and led his army to victory. This victory wasn't just Macedonia's. It was the announcement of a warrior destined to rule the world. The throne and the king's assassination. But destiny always has its twists. A few years later, King Philip was assassinated. Conspiracies, jealousy, and the hunger for power shook Macedonia. In this turmoil, at just 20 years old, Alexander ascended the throne, becoming King Alexander of Macedonia. He swiftly crushed rebellions, united his kingdom, and strengthened his army. Now his eyes were fixed on the Persian Empire, which had once humiliated Greece. In his heart burned a single fire. Now it's time for revenge. The beginning of world conquest marched toward Persia. In 334 BCE, Alexander set out with an army of about 35,000 soldiers toward Persia. His soldiers called him King of Kings because he didn't just command them, he fought beside them. The first battle at the river Granicus. The Persian army was massive, but Alexander's strategy was precise. He crossed the river and struck like lightning. Result: Persia suffered its first crushing defeat. Facing Darius, the Battle of Issus now. Alexander faced King Darius III of Persia. The Battle of Issus, 333 BCE. Darius's army, over 100,000 soldiers. Alexander's, barely 40,000. The battle was fierce. Darius spread his army wide across the plain, But Alexander broke through the center with a decisive strike. Darius fled, leaving behind his wife, mother, and daughters, all captured by Alexander. But Alexander treated them with great respect. He said, "A king's victory lies not in humiliation, but in honor." The conquest of Egypt and the birth of Alexandria. Next, Alexander marched into Egypt. The people, weary of Persian rule, welcomed him as a liberator. In Egypt, the priests hailed him as the son of the sun god. There, he founded a new city, Alexandria, which still stands today as a symbol of his legacy. From that moment, he began to be known as Alexander the Great, Son of God. The Battle of Gaugamela, the final decisive war, 331 BCE, the Battle of Gaugamela. One of the greatest battles in history. Darius assembled an enormous force, over 100,000 soldiers, hundreds of chariots, and war elephants. But Alexander spread his army skillfully, creating gaps in the Persian lines, and attacked from behind. Darius's army collapsed, and soon after, Darius was killed by his own men. The Persian Empire was no more. Alexander was now ruler of all Asia. The humanity of the conqueror. Even after his victory, Alexander didn't destroy Persian culture. He celebrated their festivals, protected their temples, and kept their officials in power. He knew that you can rule with the sword, but you win hearts with respect. He married Darius's daughter, a symbol of unity between Greek and Persian civilizations. Toward India, the final challenge. Now, Alexander's eyes turned toward India, then the land of wealth, wisdom, and powerful kingdoms. In 326 BCE, he crossed the Hindu Kush mountains and entered India. There he met King Porus, a ruler known for his bravery and pride. Porus versus Alexander. The Battle of the Hydaspes. On the banks of the river Jhelum, Hydaspes, the epic battle began. Porus's army had elephants, cavalry, and fierce warriors. Amid rain, mud, and thunder, war raged on. Alexander's army was exhausted, but through clever tactics, he surrounded Porus's forces. After a long, brutal fight, Porus was captured. Alexander asked, "How should I treat you?" Porus replied, "As one king treats another." Moved by his courage, Alexander said, "Porus, that very answer makes you greater than I." He returned Porus's kingdom and sent him back with honor. The return and fatigue. By the time they reached India's borders, Alexander's troops were exhausted. Years of war, death, and distance had broken their spirit. They refused to march further. Alexander was forced to turn back. On the journey home, many soldiers died from hunger and disease. Even Alexander's own health began to fail. Death, the last breath of an immortal king. In Babylon, in June 323 BCE, Alexander fell ill with a high fever. For 10 days, he fought against death. And finally, at the age of 32, the greatest warrior of the ancient world breathed his last. It is said that his body did not decay for 6 days after his death. People whispered, he was no man, he was a god. Science suggests he might have suffered a stroke or paralysis, making him appear dead while still alive. Legacy, a name that lives forever. After Alexander's death, his empire fragmented, but his name, his influence, and his ideas never faded. Through him, Greek culture spread across Asia, Egypt, and India. A new era in art, philosophy, and science began, known as the Hellenistic Age. Hundreds of cities were named after him. Alexandria, Alexandropolis, Alexandretta. His name echoed across the world. Alexander's philosophy. Alexander used to say, "The day my dreams became bigger than my fears, I became invincible." He believed, before conquering the world, conquer yourself. He knew that true strength lay not in the sword, but in thought and self-belief. The end. The one who wins is the Sikandar. Alexander may not walk the earth today, But his story, his vision, his legacy live on through every age. He taught the world that many people dream, but only those who pay the price to make dreams real are called Sikandar, the victors. He is gone, but every time someone defeats their fear and turns the impossible into reality, history repeats itself. The one who wins is the Sikandar.